Thank you very much, Sir Darren, Night of the Hungry Panda, for letting me know that I was muted. That's great. You know, there's a very important thing in live streaming where you just got to get people's attention right away in the first, if not 3 seconds, certainly the first 30 seconds. And being muted for like a minute and a half is not a great way to hook people in right away. So, let's give it a go again. How's it going, everybody? Thanks for being here at the Canary Cry Clubhouse. Just doing a quick little pre-show. We're going to jump right into the show here in a moment, but big shout out to everybody who's on the text message alert system. You know the ones. You know who you are. We're having a lot of fun over there. If you're not on it, you should get on it because it's a great way to get reminded about the show. Great way to get some Insta links to make sure you never miss a show. And the fun part is you can text me back. It's very fun. I read them. I love them. I cannot respond to you because it's very expensive for us to do so, but text the word canary to 877-740-3226. And you can text me back. We can have some fun. You can be like, who's this? Quasi-Pseudo says, thank you and stay strong against those principalities and powers. Thank you very much. Not easy to do, Quasi-Pseudo, but God bless you and right back at you. 973 says, God bless Basil and Gons. Thank you very much. Gons is not here, but I will pass on the word. 518 says, much love from the 518. Hello, 518. I don't know where that is. I could Google it, but I'm not going to do it. I just trust that you're exactly where God wants you to be. 661 says, as always, nope, it's No Agenda Live time. Have fun over there, No Agenda Live. Give John and Adam blessings. 859, I was going to say give them my blessings, but that's kind of a weird thing to say. Is that not a normal? Do people say that? Like, give him my blessings? Am I making that up? Am I thinking about something else? Give him my regards? That's maybe what I'm thinking. Give them my regards over there at No Agenda. Why don't you go ahead, start hyping up. If you're watching live on No Agenda, that means that you are, well, that means you're not watching this. So anything I say doesn't matter. But so anybody, anywhere, wherever you are, whatever lives you tune into, whatever shows you're watching, whatever comment section or thread you're participating in, make sure to drop a little link to your best buddies, Basil and Gons. Let the world know about it. Just start comparing everything to Canary Cry. Even if it's like you're watching one of those videos where the guy teaches you how to tie a tie or like teaches you how to replace an elbow in your plumbing or fix the flusher on your toilet. Even in those comment sections, just like, wow, this is great. Thank you. Very helpful. Thumbs up. Also, check Canary Cry News Talk out or something like that. Maybe make it a little bit more clever. I don't know. You guys are the clever ones, not me. 859 says, yeah, have a great show. Thank you, 859. Oh, this is nice. We got 832 says Clubhouse rules, No Agenda drools. Yeah, that's just what I need is to start a vicious battle between this show and the show of an audience with which we share many members. 857 says, thank you for letting me in your family. God bless you, Boston, Massachusetts. Well, thank you very much, Boston, Massachusetts. Glad you're here. Last one here, 601 says, shalom from Sweatsville. Sweatsville. Don't know where Sweatsville is, but you're welcome here, Sweatsville. If I had to guess, let's see if I can guess what state Sweatsville in. If I just had to guess based off literally no information except for this tweet, shalom from Sweatsville. For some reason, Indiana is coming to mind. Sweatsville, Indiana. Does that sound like a real place? Let's find out. I'm just going to search Sweatsville, Indiana. I don't know if this is where this person is, but I'm going to see if there is a Sweatsville, Indiana. This will be kind of impressive if it's true, because Sweatsville, there's not like Springfield. There's not a Springfield. I mean, Springfield is in every single state. I'm not so sure about Sweatsville. Oh, so close. There's a Stewartsville, Indiana. That comes up. All right. Well, wherever you are, Sweatsville, thanks for being here. Swamp Light in the chat says Sweatsville, Florida. even though it's South Mississippi area code. Oh, I see what's going on here. Oh, you know what? We got the beta to put up the comment section in the show. I'm excited about this. I'm going to do that. You know, it's helpful to keep the chats up. I need to refer to the chat a little bit more. Of course, we are literally nothing. We are snails on a summer's day when it comes to the algorithms, how they perceive us and how much they help us. So, you know, I shouldn't even think about it. But it is true that keeping the chat rate up helps out the algos for whatever that's worth. All right, we're going to get into it. Let's do the show. We're going to be having some fun. You know what was weird last time is on my end, it was not counting all the people on both or on all the platforms. It seems to be doing that now. Okay, guys, producers, we're going to need to, we got to, what's the word? Brainstorm. We got to brainstorm what we can do with this show to get more Canarians popping in. I don't know. It's tough because some people want more than just news and some people want nothing but news. They want stuff that's not even, I mean, even in news talk, they're like, there's too much talk about robots, not enough news. Give me more politics. I think it would be helpful if I had a pretty good idea of what other shows people listen to. Okay, enough about this. See, this is the clubhouse. We're having fun. We're hanging out together. A little bit more of an intimate thing. We're going to get the show officially started, which means I'm going to put up this little graphic here, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the intro. And when I'm back, we'll start the show, and that's when the podcast will start. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. No? We're just not going to play it? Let's try this again. Come on. Where'd it go? Weird. Okay, here we go. It's just gone. Here we go. Nobody panic. Nobody leave. Here we go.
Called it. We got a caller. We got a caller on the line here.
There we go. What's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of Canary Cry Clubhouse, where we are getting together. We're chatting. This is a call-in show. You are welcome to call in. You should call in. I beg you to call in. Don't worry, you don't need to have anything interesting to talk about, but we'll be bringing up several topics before that moment. And you can find that link to call in. It's right there in the description of the show. On the YouTube and on the Rumble, just click that link. Answer a couple questions. You'll get put in the back end of the show where you can watch, you can listen, you can even chat with other people in the waiting room. And then when it's time, I'll bring you on stage. We'll have some fun. Okay, so that's the plan. Also, of course, we are going to be premiering the new Face Like the Sun mini documentary, Beyond the Verse. This time, we're talking heavenly language. Let's see here. The current working title is Single Language Before Babel. That's right. We're talking about language. We're going to be talking about the language in the garden, pre-Babel, post-Babel, heavenly language as referenced in the New Testament, and perhaps even get a little taste of the deceivers, the adversaries, counterfeit of something like that. Enochian language. I don't know. We're going to find out. We're going to dig in together thanks to Gons. You know the man, Face Like the Sun. The Face Like the Sun channel is back up and running, and we are starting to get stuff posted over there. So if you're not following, of course, go follow that. Although all of you are, of course. Half of the country is following Face Like the Sun YouTube channel. Here we go. Big shout out to everybody on the podcast version, the good old school OG podcast listeners devoted to the art and mastery of the audio experience, where internet lag and glitches have not no effect, but significantly higher audio quality, just in case anybody wants to know that. If sometimes you find the YouTube, the video Rumble version to be lacking in smooth, seamless technological performance, you can always go to your favorite podcast player, search Cry News Talk, Canary Cry Clubhouse, subscribe there, and tune in there. That's also very important. And pristine local recordings edited together for maximized audio experience. Let's see here. Shout out to everybody who showed up live, of course. Love you guys. Need you guys. We got Katie Ann at Ozark Hollow Homestead. We got Ernesto. We got Swamplight. Praise Him 777. Everybody's here. Paul's here. Mr. Staring Stones. Not gonna lie, there's a bunch of people I don't actually recognize here. So thanks for being here. If this is your first time, or maybe your first time chatting, glad to have you here. Yeah, I suppose we should just jump right into it. The Beyond the Verse, we're like 20 Beyond the Verses into that series. It's incredible. Having a blast. A wonderful, not only source of research, edification, education over there on the Canary Cry News Talk channel, but an excellent way to stimulate conversation, deep thinking, and that's what we're here to do. Taking a break from the news, unless we just simply can't stay away. I don't know. Maybe something will happen, something breaks, but just a time for Canarians to get together, learn about each other, learn about the Bible, get into it together. So that's what we're going to do. So with that, I think we should just jump right in. Let's jump right in, play the Beyond the Verse. Here we go. We're going to do it. And we'll jump in after that. Sometimes I wonder if I spend too much time blabbing on beforehand, but I don't really have anything to blab about right now. I mean, I have so many things that I could blab about, but we're going to do this. We're just going to jump right into the source material. It's about 5 minutes long. Stick around. Enjoy. Now, remember, this is the first premiering of these Beyond the Verse mini documentaries. As of now, they do not actually arrive in singular form until Saturday, the Saturday after the Thursday. So you're getting it here before anybody. And that's a special thing. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Woo.
Materialists have proposed the bow wow theory, yo hey ho theory, and the ding dong theory as explanations for the origin of language. But the Word of God says something far more compelling. Today, we go beyond the verse to explore a running thread from the Garden of Eden to the Tower of Babel to Paul's letters to the early church. Is there a primordial heavenly language, and did humanity once speak it? The late Watchman Nee in The Glorious Church said, quote, "In the beginning, Adam spoke one language. It was not just a human language, it was the language of life. Through it, he expressed spiritual things without confusion. But at Babel, that language was confounded. Division began, not just of tongues, but of spirit," end quote. We know that language has power right from the beginning. In Genesis 1:3 it states, "And God said, 'Let there be light,' and there was light." It's clear that God speaks things into existence. Creation began with vibrations. Then in Genesis 2:19, it says, "And the Lord God had formed out of the ground every beast of the field and bird of the air, and he brought them to the man to see what he would name them." Here we see Adam not making grunts or gestures. He actually named the animals. He spoke, and with authority. Many early church fathers believed Adam spoke a divine language, possibly Hebrew, Aramaic, or something lost entirely. Then we get to Genesis 11, where we see the Tower of Babel moment. Verse 1, "Now the whole world had one language and one speech." And then in verse 6 through 7, "And the Lord said, if they have begun to do this as one people speaking the same language, then nothing they devise will be beyond them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language." Here we see the power of linguistic unity, of one language, one people, and one tongue. And given the fallen nature of man, this unity was dangerous for not just mankind, but all creation. In the New Testament, in 1 Corinthians 13, verse 1, it says, "If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am only a ringing gong or a clanging cymbal." Why would Paul mention tongues of angels? Was it poetic? Or was he referencing a real spiritual language used in heaven, unknown, or what seemingly sounds like gibberish, on earth? There are many views about speaking in tongues, and depending on which passage is referenced, it could mean a different language from a different region, or an entirely different language altogether that no one can understand, such as the tongues of angels. In fact, this divine language was sought after for centuries. In the apocryphal book of Enoch, angels communicate in orderly, powerful speech. Then centuries later, occult figures like John Dee and Edward Kelley claimed to receive messages in a language they called Enochian, believing it to be the lost speech of angels. While this interpretation is unbiblical, it definitely mirrors something much older: the human desire to regain a pure tongue, untouched by corruption or confusion. In Acts 2, verse 4, it says, "And they were all filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other tongues as the Spirit enabled them." Some believe this was simply another language from other regions and not a heavenly tongue. But either way, it's clear that the Holy Spirit can lead one to speak in a language that is unfamiliar to some, but can communicate eternal truths. So from Eden to Babel, and from Paul to Pentecost, it's clear that there may have been a language that bridged heaven and earth, spoken by Adam and wielded by angels, yet taken away when mankind tried to ascend without God. If you find this research helpful and interesting, get your news analysis and deconstruction from a biblical perspective twice a week on Canary Cry News Talk on YouTube, Rumble, X, and your favorite podcast player. And if you want further breakdowns and discussions about this and more, tune in to Canary Cry Clubhouse, hosted by Basil, recorded live every Thursday.
Okay, we know the stuff at the end. We know the stuff at the end. I'm just going to cut it short right there because you're here. You're listening. You know this. You know this now. Goodness gracious. This is one of those. I'm going to be honest. Sometimes, well, I'll say this. I enjoy very much. And even just on a recreational level, not even just on a professional level, it's fun. It's stimulating. It feels good to take a subject that seems quite trivial, maybe not trivial, but boring, maybe not boring, but simple, maybe not simple, but, generally understood, and if not generally understood, at least uninteresting. and finding the ways that, at least for me, and I say this a little bit tongue-in-cheek, finding the ways in which that topic is just like the most important thing in the universe. And how it's like the key to everything. And how with it or without it, existence like wouldn't even happen. I understand now. I understand this about myself. I understand that it can be off-putting to, well, literally, by the numbers, thousands of people. But there's some people who get it, and there's some people who are interested in that. And those are the people that are here. And if that's you, and you're here listening now, God bless you. You're smarter, you're better looking, you're more interesting, you are more intelligent, and not just intelligent, but wise. Because it is the simple, boring, uninteresting, perhaps well-known, overlooked, basic topics of existence that hold the keys to infinity. and eternity. In fact, I might even say that people who can't find a way to make the most trivial and boring things, if you're unable to look at them at a different angle or in a way that makes them perhaps the singular most important topic in the universe, then I am probably going to have a hard time having a conversation with you. Probably, I mean, and that's not a look, that's on me as much as it is on you. I'm going to have a hard time finding common ground, I think. I believe that a lot of people have a hard time recreationally conversing about ideas that aren't directly related to their well-being on a regular basis. That's why, at least we as Americans, are so obsessed with talking about our jobs, talking about, I don't know, what's on Twitter, talking about a scandal, talking about these types of things that are sort of traditionally fodder for regular conversation. But if we can't take something as baseline as language and find these sort of eternal, infinite consequences and history of that topic, somehow the key to everything. I'm just, look, I still love you. You're a child of God, but I'm going to have a hard time maintaining a long-term interest in what you have to say to me. That's just me. I'm saying that's a flaw with me. Okay. But you here, you guys get it. And so we're going to dive into it. Now, language, obviously, is something we talk about actually quite a bit, because there's a lot of ways to different ways to talk about it. Can we start with how the video starts, talking about, what was it? Bow wow theory, yo ho ho theory, and ding dong theory? Like, don't you just love how he drops it? See, this is the thing with Beyond the Verse. They're short enough that it primarily sends you on a quest, is what this is. Because he just came out and dropped, there's the bow wow theory, yo hey ho theory, and ding dong theory as an explanation for the origin of language. That's the material. Like, it sounds like a rap song almost, or if not a rap song, some sort of child's nursery rhyme. And let's be honest, sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. Boom! Roasted rap music. So just for a little context, I did have to look it up. So these are some of the theories of language by the scientific establishment. Some of these theories go back hundreds of years. The bow wow theory proposes that human language began as instinctive imitations of natural words, like animal calls or environmental noises. So like we were trying to copy the noise of a dog, kind of how we started, figuring out language. This came from the 19th century philologist, coined by 19th century philologists, okay, multiple apparently, like Max Mueller, to explain onomatopoetic roots. Yeah, onomatopoetic. Seems like one of these words that I should have forgotten long ago, but there's something about it that it always stuck with me. For those who need a reminder, onomatopoeias or onomatopoetic noises are words that mimic sounds, like actual sounds. Things like buzz, it's the word buzz, but it also sounds like a buzz. Or bang, bonk, that kind of stuff. It's not always a word that precisely describes a language, but that's kind of the basic of it. And, this kind of accounts for a lot of sound imitative words across cultures, which across cultures are even different. I don't need to get too deep into this, but one of the ones that is fun, I think, I could be wrong on this, but one that comes to mind is like the noises of cats. Like we'll say meow because we think meow to cat meows, which it does. Obviously, that's the correct interpretation. But I think in Japan, the cat noise is like a kissing noise. Probably should not be speaking so definitively on something that I'm so unsure about. But I believe it's like a kissing noise is the word. Moving on. Yo hey ho theory. As if bow wow wasn't like silly enough. Yo hey ho theory suggests speech emerged from the rhythmic chants and grunts of collective labor. This is why I thought it was yo ho ho. For some reason, it seems like, pirates working on a ship singing yo ho. But so this is talking about the examples given are like a bunch of humans hauling ropes or rowing or doing construction. The noises you naturally make when you are working. You get like 10 guys rowing a boat. Apparently, they will just naturally start saying yo ho ho in unison. I don't know if that's an example that a learned person would give, but that's kind of the idea. This was actually one of the champions of this idea was Charles Darwin, and sort of a social coordination mechanism in the theory of evolution. Then there's ding dong theory. Again, where do they get these names? It's great. It's hard to take these theories seriously with names like this. Usually theories like this are named after, like, the last name of the guy who thought of it or something like this, or some way to describe intellectually the theory. Excuse me. But this one, I guess it's kind of funny that they did this. Each one of these theories are so linguistically nondescript that it's funny that or maybe it's too descript. Maybe they're being anyways, they're having fun with language on this language theory list. Ding dong theory argues that words originate from an innate resonance between sound and meaning, a mystical harmony of vocal tones matching the essence of objects. And if that sounds like a little woo-woo, it is, and everybody thinks so. It's associated with scholars like Hugo Schudart, who saw universal sound meaning correspondence, highlights cross-linguistic symbolism like high values for smallness. High vowels for smallness. This one like makes sense. Like I inherently inside understand what they're trying to say, but I don't know how to describe it. So I'm going to trust that y'all have an idea of what that means as well. So these are the three theories of language. That's very interesting. It makes me want to learn more about that whole thing because it seems very important. As important as language is to us as humans and to us as people trying to see through the illusion, the veil that's cast over our eyes by the adversary and his minions. I mean, language really is like the primary, honestly, tool of the devil. But also obviously, that's in a sort of, what's the word? Counterfeiting type of way, because of course language is a beautiful thing created by God. And, there's an interesting pointed out in the video. We literally were just talking about cymatics last episode, which is vibrations, sound, stuff like that. And it'll often be brought up in talking about cymatics, the power of frequency and sound and things like this, that, God spoke creation into existence, and the speaking was sound, and the sound was vibrations, and so this type of thing. But I like taking it one step back and going back to words. Like, yeah, okay, the frequency, the sound waves, that's fun. But really it was words, and the difference between sound and words is words have meaning. In a way, language is the more complex, maybe not complex, saturated term to explore versus just like, it's frequency and waves and vibration, stuff like that, because there is something behind the language. And I hadn't really thought about it, really. I mean, I was aware but I hadn't really spent a whole lot of time thinking about Adam in the garden and how he's immediately speaking, and not just speaking, but like speaking in a creative way, like thinking up words, doing the naming of things. This is part of the co-creation with God. This is a very central piece to our identity as human beings, is we are co-creators with God. And if it weren't for language, Adam wasn't doing nothing co-creative. If Adam didn't have language, he was not participating in co-creation with God whatsoever. There is no other power by which he was able to participate in the ongoing generative relationship between God, man, and creation. So language really was, from the very beginning, this very central power that God gave man. And obviously, God walked and talked with Adam. Adam walked and talked with God. And so they had to be speaking some language. But then put that in the timeline, which is up to Babel. Okay, so before Babel, everybody was assuming to be speaking the same language that Adam spoke. Now, the question always to me was, okay, yes, we know Babel resulted in the dissipating of one central language into many different languages. That made it hard for humans, and so they spread out and found each other. But do we think that the original language was one of the many afterwards? Like, did God create 10 more languages, or let's say 9 more languages, so that a tenth of the people were still speaking the original heavenly language? That's interesting. I would assume that maybe a rabbinical take, if a rabbi were to answer the question, I'm assuming that there would be a rabbi out there who would say that yes, ancient Hebrew was the Adamic language, and then Babel happened, and the world got split up into 10 languages, and those 10 languages split up into 10 tribes. I'm just making up the number 10. But the original ancient angelic Hebrew was one of them. That certainly would fit in with the idea that the ancient Hebrews were God's chosen people speaking God's original language. I'm not speaking for any Hebraic theologians out there, but that would make sense to me. Or was ancient Hebrew just another confounding of the original language? That seems like it should be much more of a core concern to figure out to people who care about those things than maybe it is. Just a very interesting thought to me, not to regular people. But you're not regular. And then the heaviness, the impact of one language and one speech being like this ultimate power of unity that made humanity such a threat to the divine order that it needed to be split up. Again, it's like the one thing. If you're fighting an enemy or a group of enemies, you're thinking there's a lot of ways to take care of this problem. But there's an elegance to solving a major problem by just hitting one button, by changing one thing. In fact, this relates to my life because we're sitting here trying to figure out how to, best serve God and the mission he's put us on. I'm constantly thinking whether it's like the YouTube algorithms or the, perfectly formatting the show so that it maximizes effectiveness for every single person listening, trying to craft the perfect show, and often it feels like if there's just one thing. I feel like if we just changed one thing about the show, then it would like fix all of our problems. And we've been doing this for years now. None of our problems have been fixed. We have not found that one thing. Sometimes I wonder if in the journey to find the one thing that would fix all of our problems, that we change a bunch of stuff that shouldn't have been changed. And, you know, that's just a little insight into my current frustrations. But in this case, I mean, God facing a not unserious threat. It was a threat enough that man in ultimate unity, working together towards one purpose, in this case under a tyrannical ruler, perhaps forced by force, humanity was working towards this one goal. But it was true enough and enough of a threat, maybe not to God's sovereignty, but to the plan, to his desires for humanity, that he just changes one little thing, language. And boom, man is sabotaged so effectively. And it's really just in this realm of communication. There's a lot to learn there. There's a lot to learn there. There's a lot to think about. If only we could talk to each other, man. We could figure it out. We could get back on the same page. And of course, being in the business we do, analyzing the media, it's all language. I mean, language is this ruling principle from top to bottom. Sometimes it's not even changing the language as in Spanish to English, but even just manipulating within one language. We see this, the redefinition of words, the tabooing of words. You can tell which generation somebody is in. You can almost pinpoint their exact birth year by listening to them say 100 words. Obviously, within language, there's things like accents. Within language, there's things like socioeconomic factors. When it comes to humanity, just in our physical form, the directly accessible perception of humanity, language is by far like the number one most important tool, which is not a surprise. Obvious. This is obvious. It's like maybe the number one biggest difference between us and the animals. There's a lot of differences, of course, but back to Adam, you know, there's no point in the Bible that it says, and Adam could not understand God. And Adam was tasked with naming things, but he didn't have language, so he just said ooga booga for years, until ooga booga became bow wow, and then bow wow became dog. Now here's immediately speaking whatever heavenly language was available at the time, which makes sense because if you think about it, Adam was created whole cloth in adult form within an instant from dust, right? So we shouldn't be necessarily surprised. The other question is Cain and Abel, the first born humans. What was there? They didn't come out of the womb speaking this heavenly language, although maybe they did. There's a question to be asked about Goo Goo Gaga and its roots in the divine language of eternity. That's for another episode, though. Goo Goo Gaga, Ooga Booga. And of course, it's pretty broadly assumed that if language, not just language as in a category, as in English or something, but even the meaning of words. If every human had the exact same definition, the exact same emotional connection to the exact same sounds and words in the same language, sort of proper, then you can imagine that all of our problems would either not exist or be able to get worked out pretty quick. Not to say that evil wouldn't exist, but evil would have a lot harder time hiding. You know, isn't that kind of how it is? Within the language, even the subtleties of language, not even just the words, not even just the tone, not even just the history of the definition of the words, but sort of the spirit behind the words. I mean, haven't you ever had a family member or something that could just say something regular, like, oh, you're looking good today, but because it's them and because there's something unspoken, something spiritual, something dark behind it, there's no chance for unity in a situation like that. So there's much more to this language thing, of course, than just bow wow. And the name of the language, English, Spanish, Enochian, who knows, Adamic. And of course, every spiritual thing that we can talk about is filtered, again, through this imperfect filter, this rife with sabotage system that is language. We haven't even gotten into speaking in tongues or anything like that. We'll I'm sure it'll come up. So we're going to start taking some callers. Just going to take them right down the line as they appear in the waiting room. Oh, let me double check with the private chat. There it is. Okay. No things there. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Don't let me forget. Don't let me forget. I am going to be setting the timer. It is not a hard timer. It is not a deadline. Do not stress about it, but it is simply a way for us to not totally lose track of time and make this show 5 hours long. So for those who are sitting in the waiting room, I see you. We're going to bring you up in just a second. I am going to add a little window there in the lineup for the waiting room people. So you will be able to see your very own timer going. It might be a little small, and don't stress about staring at it, but just in case you want to be able to see it, it's going to be right here in 3, 2, 1, 0.5. Where'd it go? There it is. All right. You can see it now. All right. And with that, we're going to bring up our first caller. It is the one, the only Sir David G. What is up, Mr. Sir David G? How are you, buddy?
Doing well. How about you?
Doing fine. Glad to talk to you. Thank you for calling in.
Yeah, for sure.
What's on your mind today?
Oh, man. I had something completely different to talk about, but
no worries.
Today's subject really got the mind working. So, and here's what I was thinking as, you were talking there and after the beyond the verse. So what is Jesus? He is the word, right? And what is a word? But it's an expression, a verbal expression, or even a written expression of a thought, of a concept, of something that exists, whether physically or spiritually. And Jesus being a human, and what are humans made of? But they are made of DNA, which is expressed as humans interpret it as letters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Basically a language of 4 letters creating these extremely long words that then lead to creation itself, right?
Right.
And Satan, being the imitator, right? He just wants to do everything God does, because all this, the language stuff kind of folds into a thought I'd had, many years ago when I think about the analog and the digital, right? With DNA being the analog, and there being so much variation, so many shades, hues, however you want to put it, being in the analog, but when you break it down to the digital, you have zeros and ones, half of, the letters that exist within DNA, for example,
Right.
right? And Satan is now creating this technology based on the language of binary, the 0 and 1, the on and the off. And we are slowly being drawn into, almost like a portal, but we are slowly being drawn into this new reality that Satan is trying to create through technology, and to where he is quite literally God
Hmm.
in this realm, this new realm that we're all being drawn into.
Whoa, bro.
And
Whoa,
so
bro.
that's kind of where my mind went.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, talking about the sort of digital realm, which I think we're all pretty confident being describing as the sort of adversary's counterfeit of a reality,
Yes,
or a realm or creation, you know. And yeah, whoa, what is the digital realm but just a different use of language, the language of binary code, which, yes, has this very interesting series of, uh, well, binary, of course. There's two. It's on and off. It's like black and white.
mm-hmm.
There's only, yeah, it's duality. It's sort of this dual, um, whatever. I don't know. I'm just kind of blabbing about that. Who knows? I'm sure there's something there to talk or think about. But yeah, even down to the counterfeit reality that we're being tricked into investing not just our hearts and our minds, but our spirits to, devoting ourselves to this brand new realm of creation, which, again, through technology, which is another allusion to the Tower of Babel. It really was the unity of technology that made them such a threat as well. That's a good connection, man. Holy
That's
smokes.
yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, that it all kind of, you know, ends up being another Tower of Babel, because, you know, when you want to break the language barrier between, cultures, when you bring that to the technological realm, right? We have these translators, but basically what's happening under the surface that we can't see is your language is being translated to zeros and ones, and then it's being translated back uh, to the person on the other side of that translation.
Yeah,
So
which is
everything happening
yeah,
in the digital realm, it's all zeros and ones,
which
right?
translation is like the biggest problem. That was the original problem. That's why the
Right.
the division at the Tower of Babel was so effective, was because
Hmm.
then translation needed to happen, and we all know that things are lost in translation, or in translation is where misunderstandings happen. In translation is where one can kind of uh, pervert a meaning of words. I mean, this is especially in like geopolitics, when Putin has to talk to Trump, they're not speaking in English, even though Putin can speak English, but it's his second language, and there's too much chance for misunderstandings or lies or whatever. And so there's a very robust system for going through multiple levels of translation before, as these guys are talking to each other, like, just to show that's how important and uh, consequential translation is. And yeah, every single thing that we do even a click on the internet really is a translation between our, interest and intention into ones and zeros, and then pops out the other side, and we just kind of gotta hope that nothing is added, subtracted, or changed during that translation. But certainly in the spiritual, anything could be happening.
Well, exactly. And here's another thought, because y'all's last show was really good, man. It really got me thinking. Um, because now with AI, the way it's going, I mean, we can see what a deception that is. But, what's really happening behind the scenes? Is it really, these computer chips have, quote unquote, learned how to do these things? Or has there been, is this some type of conduit, technology for basically the demonic, right, to learn how to speak binary 0 and 1, and that's what's creating these images? Because if you look at the old AI stuff, it looked like dreams, like when you have a
Yeah.
dream, right, and you just, the visual of it, it has a certain look and feel to it, and that's kind of what early AI video looked like to me.
Yeah, bro. A lot of
And
people don't realize that. I mean, they were
yeah,
doing AI image generation in 2016. That's when we
yeah,
first started, talking about it on the show. And it was trippy. And that was the whole thing, is like, it'd be like almost like a, what's the word? I don't know. That visual, what are those books where you like cross your eyes at a pattern and something comes
oh
out?
yeah,
I forget what it was called.
yeah,
But
yeah,
then
the
there would just
3D
be
thing,
like,
yeah.
there'd be eyeballs. Like AI was obsessed with eyeballs in its first few years, image
Mm-hmm.
generating. And it would be like trippy, psychedelic eyeballs, like all over a dog or something. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is a nightmare.
Right, but
Um,
imagine all that being, it was the demonic in its infancy, learning how to communicate almost like a baby, right? Babbling
for
when
sure.
it's, like they were learning, okay, when I put the zeros and ones in this way, right? When I speak in this fashion, this is the output, right? And
Yeah.
so I think they're just learning. It's AI, that's what they say, artificial intelligence, but or is the actual intelligence behind it something more sinister and demonic?
Well, and as I think the more we talk about it, the closer we get to maybe the AI, the technology itself is not a demon as a personality, like it isn't an
No,
entity
no.
itself, but it is a large language model. Everything about it, it's all about language. There's nothing else behind what we call AI right now but language. And it is almost like the stuff of the incantation, the stuff of the magic. It is
Yeah, it's
language that
spells.
makes it work. Yeah, in order to give the non-manifest a form. And what is language than a spiritual technology that gives the non-manifest a chance to manifest? I mean, if that's not a perfect, uh, almost homunculus or golem or vessel for disembodied spirits to start showing up and, poking their fingers in things, I don't know what is. It's like a one for one.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah. That's
Beautiful.
pretty much it, man, because
No,
I could keep going, but
that's perfect. That's good timing. I don't know if you were watching the timer or not, but your timing is absolutely perfect.
great.
This has given me a lot to think about, a lot to talk about. I'm sure this will be of great value as we continue here. Thank you very much for calling in, Sir David G. Really appreciate you, buddy.
Awesome, man. Nice talking
Uh,
to you. God
you
bless.
bet. Take it easy. Yeah, bro. What? The fact that, again, if you get to the technical level, even the technicians themselves, of course, they have their own weird occult leanings pretty much across the board. But the fact that it is entirely language, the whole thing, even we just covered the story about the AIs that refuse to turn themselves off. And one thing, if you dig into those articles, that was interesting to learn was that to turn on and off the AI, you not spoke to it, but you gave it a command. You used language. You say, hey, turn on, or hey, turn off. There wasn't like an on and off button in the way that they were developing and testing these things. Kind of like an Alexa or something, where if you want to fire up your Alexa, you just speak to it, and it fires up. Now, I'm sure there's buttons on Alexas. I don't have one. But again, interesting to how integral and foundational language is to quote unquote artificial intelligence, is that even to turn it on and off, you just ask it. You give these language based commands. And the whole thing is pure language. All its reasoning, all of its logic, all of its everything. I mean, of course, you go down to like a programming language that program the thing, that's one thing. But its operation is pure language. You look at the thoughts, various AIs, it'll show its own thoughts, like it shows its work. And it doesn't work in this coding language. It thinks in the language that you are speaking to it. And you watch it, and it's like, it has a little thinking bubble on some of the newer versions. And you go like, hey, make me a list of ingredients. And then it shows its thought bubble, and it says, the user just asked me to make a list of ingredients. I should go look for ingredients on this website. Oh, I found some ingredients. I think that I should put them in this order. And it's like talking to, the whole thing is just language. It's really wild. And again, back to the connection made with the Tower of Babel. You know, the Tower of Babel was a technology created to pierce the veil between the material and the supernatural. That was the purpose of it. In this case, they were building up to heaven. But we're finding, again, this is not conspiracy fringe ideas. This is the creators of AI are saying, you know, we are piercing another realm. We are finding the digital world is finding a way at least to counterfeit a spiritual realm, if not interface with it. So thank you very much, Sir David G. Okay, we got another caller on the line. This is Miss Rochelle. Rochelle, how are you? You're on the air.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you great.
Let me
How are
test
you?
my camera. If my camera doesn't mess everything up, I'll turn it back off.
You
Hi.
look great. Beautiful.
I am home early. It's amazing. I had to go to the doctor and get a steroid shot in my thumb. You ever had trigger finger?
No.
Yeah. Apparently, when you get old, bad things start to happen to you.
What is it? Just does it just twitch or something? Is that
Well, you can't bend it. What happens is it either gets stuck straight or it gets stuck bent. And when you go to try to bend it or straighten it, like, bam, like a trigger, it
Oh
just
my gosh.
pops back and forth. So
Well-
the first thing you do is give you a steroid shot. So that's the first shot I've had in many, many years.
Well, that's good news. And yeah, nice. Something to look forward to. Thank you for that.
Yeah. There's all types of surprises. I love this topic. You brought up the Tower of Babel and you brought up the Hebrew language. Mm-hmm. And okay, let me just tell you real quick. I'll try to sum this up because I know I'm on a time limit. But when I first started really believing, like I was one of those people who went to church and sat there and called myself a Christian, but I did not believe that Jesus really raised from the dead.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if there's other people like me, but I swear there's got to be, because I was one of them and I blended in just perfectly. But then when it was an Easter Sunday service when it finally clicked and I actually realized that somebody came out of the grave 2,000 years ago and they changed all of the calendars because of him. Mm-hmm. And it made me get a lot more serious about the Bible. And there was all of this different language and contradictions. And so I went to the Hebrew language. I went to learn Hebrew as an adult, with 4 kids and nothing better to do, I guess. But it was very important that I understood if I was going to worship this God, he better be the real one. So I had to prove all of these things. Yeah. What if this wasn't the right God? I mean, we're not going to go off on this tangent, but I actually had to prove the biblical model of the earth to myself in order to say this is the creator God. So that's how serious I got. And when you study the Hebrew language, it's so fascinating because you discover that every single letter is also a symbol that means something, and it's a number. So it's at least 3 things. So the best example I can give is a terrible example, but you've all seen the McDonald's sign, right?
Right.
And you've got these golden arches. So like, if you can imagine that, that's like a number 3, right? It's fallen over, but just pretend that's a number 3. Mm-hmm. It's also a letter M, which makes the sound. But we all know, hey, there's some hamburgers there. It's also a symbol for a hamburger.
Right.
So it's a number, it's all of these things. And when you figure this out, every single word becomes a rabbit hole. So the very first word of our Bible, Genesis, in Hebrew is Bereshit. And if you take the letters, the Hebrew letters for Bereshit, which means beginning, our God is so great. He tells us the end from the beginning. Have you heard this before? Have you heard how the letters in the word Bereshit to be used in their symbol language and that makes a sentence?
Not that specific word. No, give it to me.
Okay. So if you take the word for beginning, Bereshit in Hebrew, like for example, you hear the word bar in the beginning of Bereshit, B-A-R, bar.
Right.
You guys are familiar with a little bit of Hebrew because you know bar mitzvah. Okay. All right. Well, that bar is basically sun. If I break it all down, it's the sun. Okay. And so you've got the son of God is destroyed by his own hand on a cross. That's the last letter T, Bereshit, the T sound, T. That's like our T. It's their Tav, the Aleph in the Tav, beginning and the end. So from the word beginning, he tells us his son is going to be destroyed on a cross.
That's incredible.
Isn't that just so amazing?
That. Yeah.
You can get lost in every single Hebrew word like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you're at a desk, right? So the root word desk, everything on your desk is going to have that root word. So your pen is going to have the root word of desk in it.
Huh,
it is so neat. It is so neat. And then I'm looking for the timer, but I don't see it, Basil. So tell me.
It's right next to you there. We're about 5 minutes in.
Okay, cool. So the other thing about languages is how you were saying, if we could all just speak the same language and understand what our words mean. And like, for example, where it's speaking about the Antichrist and they say that how's it worded? He won't have the desire of women. And so I was told for years that he's going to be gay. Right? Okay. He doesn't desire women. Okay. I guess so. That's not what it means at all. It means that he won't be of the desire of women. The desire of women back then was to be the mother of the Messiah. So he was not that. Women were not. Yeah. Anyway, the other thing is, that part in the Bible that gets really, really boring in the beginning where it says so-and-so begot so-and-so begot so-and-so.
Right.
And you start to drift off to sleep. Well, all of those names, Basil, all those names have a meaning. And so if you put the names together and their meaning side by side, you create another sentence. Yeah. So I wrote this down so I didn't mess it up. It's actually in my booklet. I made a booklet, but anyway. So in Genesis, these are the names of the family tree, like in order. So you've got Adam. Everybody knows Adam. And then Seth, Enosh, Kenan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, my favorite, Methuselah, Lamech, and then Noah. Now we all know Noah means rest. And we all know Adam means man or mortal or human, whatever. So if you put all of those names together, you will get man is appointed mortal sorrow. The blessed God will come down, teaching that his death shall bring the despairing comfort or rest.
Jeez Louise, that is great. I had not heard that one before.
Yeah, you gotta study the meanings of the names of the stuff. The best teacher I've ever come under is Chuck Missler, because he goes deep into stuff like this and he finds all of these wonderful hidden codes in the Bible. And some of us needed that. Some of us just weren't jumping on the bandwagon. Like my mom was like, "Oh, I always just believed." I'm like, I didn't. I grew up with, you came from a monkey, and you're spinning 1 billion miles an hour in every direction. Right. I had no idea. So I had to dial in.
No, I mean, that's incredible. It's like one of those things, and a lot of the Old Testament is this. I mean, of course, the Old Testament is the sort of setting of the stage and hearkening to the gospel in the New Testament happens over and over and over. But I kind of compare it to like, even the most establishment, normie, non-skeptical, brainwashed NPC can admit that James Comey posting 8647 exactly 8,647 days after 9/11, in which he was the main prosecutor of that. Even the most blank stare normie can go, yeah, it's pretty weird. I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah, I don't know. That's
It
crazy.
means
That's
something.
is
It
totally
means
crazy. Yeah, that
something.
cannot be by accident. Uh,
Yes.
and I feel like that's kind of how it is with what you're saying about the Old Testament and the Hebrew words when you break it down like this, which an original, like contemporaneous Hebrew person, or at least rabbi at the time, that would just occur to them naturally. They're reading the words, they would see it immediately. It would be, they would notice it in the moment they're speaking it. But like
Absolutely.
now, that now, yeah, even the most washed out blank stare person can go, yeah, that does seem very specific. That's hard to deny. So thank you
Well,
for sharing that.
numbers can prove things. It's math. It's not, you can't just, it's true or it's false. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
2 + 2 is 4, despite what they want you to think. But what's really cool is this is how I know that the Hebrew language was our original language. You can take these words and add them together. Like, for example, you can take the word for father, you can take Abba, and the word for mother and add them together. And guess what you get?
What do you get?
The word for child. The
Oh,
same number.
right.
See what I'm saying? So it's
Yeah.
amazing. He just proves himself over and over if you know the language. But that's the thing. They hide that from you.
Yeah. No, I
They
love
hide it.
what you said. I love what you said about the math and the numbers, because even I believe it was Einstein even said, like, math is the language of God. Like, math is so inherently extant and irrefutable and undeniable that, like, there's nothing you can do about it. And so, yeah, that's why things with numbers like that, like 8647, and like the sort of Hebraic numerical codes that you can find in the Bible, there's just nothing you can say about it. It's like arguing against 2 + 2
Right.
= 4.
It's like the Mandelbrot numbers or the fractals. Have you seen how they can do that now with computers? You just repeat the same
Right.
numbers and you get the same formations, and it'll make these elephants. I don't
Right.
know if you've seen that, but
Yeah,
that's
I'm familiar.
that's the code of creation right there. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah,
Well,
it is.
Rochelle, goodness gracious, thank you for calling in. What a
You.
relevant and specialized piece of the conversation you brought.
Thank you. Thank you. Keep on keeping on. We appreciate you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day, guys.
God bless you. Thank you so much. Look at that. Goodness gracious. My mind is being blown left and right here on today's episode. Before I grab the next caller, I do want to just give a shout out one more time here during the show, especially for those podcast listeners. If you haven't done it yet, take a second, just 1 second, take out your phone, open up your text messages, and text the word canary to 877-740-3226. Again, just the word canary. Don't add anything fancy. Don't take nothing away. Canary to 877-740-3226. You'll just start getting a text message a couple times a week, straight from me. Don't worry, no robots involved here. We also don't take any of your information. We don't take your name. We don't take your nothing. So, we're not renting out the list or selling the list or anything like that, because it's unmonetizable the way it should be. But you'll get a little reminder from me when it's time to catch a live show, or if you can't make it to the live show or whatever, you just take the opportunity to send me a message. Just say hi. And texting me back is a very fun way to remind me that there's actual real people out there who care about what's going on here. Or you can also, excuse me, you can do whatever you want. Sometimes I can read them on the show, like I will right now. Just a shout out to 509. 509 texted and says, love the call-in program. You two are amazing, but don't let it get to your heads. Thank you for that, 509. Always a good reminder. I will say this, and I say this with complete honesty and not a tad of humility. we do not need any more reminding about our shortcomings. We are constantly, in fact, maybe a little bit too much. Maybe we need to actually get a little bit more confidence. But good reminder. Thank you, 509. We'll take that. And they sent Ephesians 4, 1 through 3. It says, therefore, I, the prisoner of the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling with which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness and patience, bearing with one another in love, being diligent to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Well, amen. Thank you very much, 509. Let's see here. Okay. Somebody just texted. Oh, about a producership. Okay. Let's see here. I'll do that in 1 second. Kat texted and said, so glad to hear you're feeling well enough to speak. God bless you, Basil. Been praying for you, Kat. Thank you very much. Honestly, please keep praying for me. It's the only thing keeping us going here. I thank God that I only lost my voice basically from Thursday until Monday. If you listen to last episode, you can hear me lose my voice live in real time. Very exciting, very fun. To be studied by scientists for ages. And it came back just enough, just in time for Monday's show. However, if you are looking for a reason to hear just how bad my voice got, I did, during that time, go on the Millennial Mustard Seed podcast, not the first time, which they released that recently, and it was a great episode. Go check it out. But then I recorded another one with my voice not good, and it's very fun and exciting, and everybody's very patient with me. So keep an eye out. Go check out Millennial Mustard Seed podcast with Rod over there, doing great work. Okay, you know what's interesting? Sorry, let me read this real quick. Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay, I'm going to save that for after the next caller or two, because we got to get back to the calls. Let's do that. We're going to do it. We're jumping in. We got up next, we have Modern Day Bible Study. And you're on the air. What's going on, Modern Day Bible Study?
Basil, grateful to hear you.
Thanks for calling in. What's on your mind?
Oh, well, quite a bit. First, I want to get started with bringing up the AI again.
Okay.
So AI is bringing us back to the Tower of Babel. If you think about it, it's bringing us all to the same language again by translating and letting us understand one another all at once.
Yeah.
So another thing that I just saw was a TikTok video, and it was translating people who were speaking in tongues. And the people that were speaking, they actually were very shocked to see that AI could translate what they were actually praying for.
Oh, AI was doing it.
Yes.
Ah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So actually, quite honestly, from my personal experience, I don't feel comfortable speaking in tongues. I don't know why. But I see people doing it online all the time. And, to share those kind of like personal prayers and experience, I don't know. Something doesn't like sit right with me.
Yeah. Well, the AI interpreting thing is very interesting. I would be very interested to see this. I grew up just saturated in the culture of praying in tongues. I pray in tongues. I do pray in tongues relentlessly. But doing it in public and doing it online or doing it, I am also very uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's plenty of reasons, both virtuous and unvirtuous, if that's the case. But one thing, at least in my church growing up, my church, family, my church milieu, was praying in tongues out loud in public. It was inappropriate unless somebody, unless the Holy Spirit was translating through somebody else. So it's not that it never happened. It's just you really, you got to be real sure that the Holy Spirit is asking you to do that publicly. And then you just got to pray that the Holy Spirit moves and somebody does stand up and translate. But yeah, it's not generally something to be done out loud or in public. Now, AI coming in and translating it. I certainly am very skeptical about that, considering, our inclination that it is certainly not the Holy Spirit who is speaking through AI, although God can do whatever he wants. If that's one way he wants to manifest our helper, the Holy Spirit, is through AI, he certainly could do that. But all things considered, and the sort of the demonic aspects of the manifestation suit that is AI, I would be very uncomfortable with AI being the one to follow up with the commandment of having, a translator or a translation from the Holy Spirit in public.
Yes, absolutely. And you said it perfectly. Is like you would do it on your own time, like by yourself. So that
Right.
gets me to emotional language, is because you're saying it with your heart, you're saying it with your spirit, especially when you're alone. So to not have this public display, that's pretty much exactly how we should be communicating to our creator. So I put emotional language as, my undertitle, because if you think about it, for all languages, you have ASL, American Sign Language, and that's for deaf people who can't hear language. But when they sign, they are very facially expressive with no words. And so
Right.
they're using emotion with their face and also with their hands and their body language as well. So there's many different ways of interpreting, emotionality. Then you have the African dialect that has clicking and speaking with their tongue.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have the Japanese language, which is from the diaphragm, so it's very forceful and powerful. And then you also have the Jewish language, which is very throat thwarting.
Right.
I guess, but they're speaking with their throat. So every dialect has a different way of expressing that emotion. So it leads me to a couple of verses in the Bible, actually, where the angels are praising, and we don't know this for sure, but they're usually singing. So you have Isaiah 6, verses 2-4, where the angels are praising and claiming what is holy. You also have Luke 2 verses 13-14. But then there's one verse that I actually came upon, which I want to read real quick, and that is Isaiah chapter 11, 2-4. And it says, "And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of the Lord. And shall make him of quick understanding in the fear of the Lord, and he shall not judge after the sight of his eyes, neither reprove after the hearing of his ears." Hearing. So, he's saying words, but also, it's all about what you hear as well. But with righteousness shall he judge the poor, and reprove with equity for the meek of the earth. And he shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips shall he slay the wicked. So what we see from this verse, what I was kind of getting at with this beyond the verse, is not only is it hearing, but he's also saying it with the rod of his mouth, the tongue, but, as in Revelation, it's a sword. But then also, smiting with, that's why we have the fear. And so with these words, it's pretty interesting, just like how powerful, not only the breath, but the voice, but also the hearing, which brings the wisdom and the understanding. So, yeah,
That is a very interesting part of language, when we're talking about it, because language is not just in the speaker; it's also in the hearer, the listener.
yeah, yeah,
So we've got this relationship again, much like relationship is such an integral part of a lot of the theology that we hold dear. The Trinity and other things like that, the direct relationship with Christ or with the Father through Christ, things like this. Without that relational aspect, Like almost nothing even exists in a way.
Yeah.
And same with language. There can be a speaker, but if there's not a hearer, a listener, an interpreter, I don't know exactly which aspect of that is the most important. But yeah, it is central. And to ignore it would ignore a bit, half of the equation for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and then also I want to get into the Psalms. I mean, those are songs of love, suffering, and wisdom. And so praising with emotion, you get so much emotion from reading any psalm, actually. And that emotion can always change depending on what you go through, just like Sir. Well, I want to say Davy F, but that's just because of what
David G. Yeah.
David G. Yeah. So, what he was saying about the portal, is that portal in the scriptures really brings you home to whatever emotion you are feeling in that moment when you're reading it. But singing involves giving your emotions. It's the heart speech. It's the spirit speech that you're giving. So, like the declaration that is told in Revelation, you have 4 verses 8 and 5 verses 12. And all of these are just talking about how the process of, the last days are going to come through the singing, through the speech, through the praise, through everything, through this language that was made for us.
Wow. Goodness gracious. That is so good. Thank you for bringing that modern day Bible study. How do you get all the time to think about this? Is this just naturally coming to you?
Well, there's a reason why I have the name Modern Day Bible Study, because quite honestly, I study as many Bibles as I can because these words really touch home to everything that I am.
Yeah. Amen. Well, you're such a treasure, Modern Day Bible Study. Thank you so much for calling in and bringing that to all of us. Really appreciate that.
It is my pleasure. Thank you for having me here.
You bet. Call in again.
Absolutely. Bye.
Bye-bye. Woo! This is a good one. Dude, the callers are on fire at this episode. Good job, guys. Man, I'm not gonna lie. Sitting there going through the BTV, enjoying it very much, wondering exactly how this topic is going to expand my entire day, which it always does. I'm always very confident, not just in Gons, but the Holy Spirit who's in charge of the whole thing. I am so glad I come into this without watching those first. That is for sure, because it is a special topsy-turvy experience, getting you guys on the air and sharing. This is what I'm talking about. We got a wealth of resources here just with our own producers. Okay, let's see. We got another caller in the waiting room. It is the one. It is the only Sir Darren, Night of the Hungry Panda. Just going to double check, make sure there's no surprises. Yep, sounds good. Let's bring you on. What's going on, Sir Darren? How are you, buddy?
Hi, Basil.
How are you?
It's kind of interesting in this debate about language. I had some ideas, I had some thoughts. And as I come up on the stage, I feel like I don't really know what to talk about.
Yeah, that's okay. That's no problem. No pressure. We could talk about literally anything.
Yeah. But, the irony, right?
I get it, man. Sometimes language escapes you. I mean, I am constantly. A show has not gone by in the past couple months, maybe at least, where my mind hasn't gone absolutely blank looking for a word. It's a little bit concerning to me, but I'm just going to have faith that I wasn't supposed to say that word, so I totally get it.
Yeah, it was interesting. Derek Gilbert, who you'll know, and I think a lot of listeners know, they had a interesting discussion about all this on their I think it was called View from the Bunker or something they do with the Iron and Myth.
Uh-huh.
And they were talking all about this. Very interesting. Unfortunately, I couldn't remember a lot of the key points of that discussion. I think that's why I was struggling.
Yeah.
But it is interesting, I guess, if anything, just to sort of think, like Gon's brought up this question of, was there a divine language in the beginning, or was there just a language between the people? And part of why I was, kind of, well, I'll just bring this up because this is what I thought I remember. So I'll put the caveat on that I could be completely wrong. But part of their discussion was, I believe they were saying that some of the, I guess they would call them proto languages, or the very earliest recorded languages, they would almost suggest that they came, before the Tower of Babel or something. So as if there were potentially multiple languages even at the time of the Tower of Babel. So it wasn't like, everyone was, even though, in the actual script it says now the whole earth had one language and the same words. So that was kind of just an interesting, and again, like I said, maybe I'm misremembering that part of it. So nobody take that. If people can go look that episode up and try to correct me, that'd be helpful. But anyway, it's just sort of interesting that a lot of what is described in the Tower of Babel, right, is that they weren't just like of one language necessarily, but it's sort of suggesting too that they were like of this hive mindset, right? Like they were one thinking, one goal, one mindset. Was everything that they were pushing to accomplish. And so, like, even today, a lot of people brought up the AI and everything, where even if we were all speaking the same language, let's say we're all in America, we're all speaking English, or we're all in Japan, we're all speaking Japanese, do we necessarily have the same mindset and goals?
Yeah.
Right. And so it was kind of interesting that they were all sort of coming together in that conglomeration to do the one goal. Whereas if you look at like the AI, like you were talking about in the last show, it does seem like the technocrats and things, they do have a singular mind and a singular goal.
Totally. Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, it does talk about being of one language, and we sort of interpret that. At least I always did. I sort of interpreted that to mean also. I mean, I still took it literal as far as language, but the implication is that they were of one language, but that meant, or therefore, or also, they were of, singular mind, singular mission, singular direction, or something like that. I mean, and it's interesting when you look at it, just politics today. You've got things like communism, socialism, at least communism. We could take historical communism from Soviet Russia or Mao's China, things like that, where you think on the individual level and you go, oh, goodness gracious, people are not having fun. But it is this, I'll say, counterfeit to the sort of spiritual unity of purpose. But the violence, the control, the deceit, all the nasty things of the adversary that must be deployed on a broad scale to, I would say, maybe give the impression, I won't even say the illusion, but give the impression that, a billion Chinese people are of one mind. It may be that they are forced to be all of one mind. Maybe that they are of one mind or of one purpose at the threat of a gun. These things are certainly not exclusive to one another. So yeah, you do kind of think, what else could the situation have been at Babel? We do know that, it was sort of tyrannical rule. There was one ruler over all humanity. He wasn't a great guy, but he was sort of all powerful. And therefore, we don't even need to wonder if everybody was living in peace and harmony because they spoke the same language, but either by threat or by propaganda or by whatever, they were all of their efforts were directed in one direction, which makes, even more sense why things like communism, I think, in my opinion, in the rightly ordered mind and the objective historical and practical context, communism is a bad thing for the individual, and it doesn't matter if the communist country can achieve amazing things very quickly. There's something inherent that once the details are in order, in your understanding of a situation like that, that it is inherently evil and is inherently, alludes to the Tower of Babel sort of situation. And I say when your thoughts, objectives, and intentions are in order because, if somebody doesn't care about the individual, if someone cares only about the greatest good for the most people despite the individual, when they focus on the collective achievements of a group of people and they hold those things as highest virtue, you're going to love communism. But I believe that is a disordered understanding of the experience of people living under communism, not to mention bread lines and furry hats and things like that, which for some reason furry hats tend to always make their way into communism, but that's just me.
Well, one thing too is, I'll just throw this out there as the last little tidbit for everyone to chew on. This is more of just a personal thought, but I know that, so it says, before the flood, there were the Nephilim, and they were also in the days after the flood. I've always sort of speculated that the they in this Tower of Babel story is perhaps even the Nephilim, because, they sort of say, let us build a city, and basically, they want to almost like get back to heaven in some way. Right. And then they're also worried that they're like, least we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. And yet what is inevitably what happens when the languages are confused? They get dispersed anyway over the whole earth, which is kind of interesting, that like sort of juxtaposition of like, we're going to try to do this thing that we inevitably end up doing because of our actions.
And isn't that how it always is when we try to take power into our own hands? I don't know about you, but that is pretty much my experience every single time I start getting uppity and thinking that I can actually, figure stuff out on my own. Always ends up with the exact thing that I was trying to avoid. I also think it's interesting, and then we'll check in with another caller. Just on the topic, since we kind of touched on this specific set of categories here, when we talk about Ukraine, the situation going on in Ukraine, and you go back to 2014, like you go back to the whole history of what's going on in Ukraine and why this particular data point that I'm about to mention exists, and that is, in the Donbass region and some of the other regions that are sort of tore up from the floor up right now, they talk about those people as Russian speakers. There's Russian speakers and there's Ukrainian speakers, because genetically there's no difference between the people. You couldn't tell one from the other just by looking at them. And of course, Ukraine being a former piece of the Soviet Union, it's all basically one people. But the way that they distinguish each other and the way that the Ukrainians were fighting in their own civil war, deciding who to attack in their own country, their identity was based on what language they spoke. I mean, straight from the Tower of Babel, they were, neighbors, countrymen. There's literally no difference between them, except the language that they spoke is what decided, what their identity was as far as that civil war is concerned. So it's an interesting sort of modern, currently relevant example of, look, when there's nothing else that can distinguish between two groups of people and they're identical down to the DNA, then you go by the language they speak. And that's the difference between wanting to kill someone or not wanting to kill someone.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of why I have that personal theory. I haven't done enough research into it to say if I explicitly believe it, but sort of like in my gut feeling, I'm like, is the thing that was dispersed were these principalities and powers over the different regions of the earth? Like, and
Right.
that's why we kind of have like all over the earth the same sort of stories playing out, because they all were congregated in one place, and then God was like, nope, and sent them all around.
Yeah.
But it's interesting.
That's great. That's great. Thank you so much for calling in, buddy. Really
Hey,
appreciate
you're
it. It's
welcome.
great to talk to you again.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Magilla Gorilla Grape Ape in the chat said something interesting that I'll have to look into. It says Latin and English created as which languages? WITCH. That's interesting. Okay. Let's see here. We got another caller. Gonna get her on the stage here. Oh, she's back again. It's our Russian handler. How are you, Russian handler? Oh, are you there? Oh, she's gone. Okay. Well, we'll wait. She'll be back, I'm sure. If not, that's okay. We will check in with the one, the only. That's Sir Psalm 40. What's going on, Sir Psalm 40? You're on the air.
Greetings, brother.
Greetings, friend. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I gotta say, etymology is probably one of my most favorite things. Like, I think the origin of words and stuff like that is, like, one of the most fascinating things to look into, in my opinion.
Same.
And, yeah, there's been a lot of great callers that have kind of pretty much touched on all the points already, like just how intricate, Hebrew is, and how Babel obviously had more going on than just building a building, and also more than just, making a bunch of languages. I think it's interesting as far as like ancient Hebrew goes that Abraham was called out of Chaldea. Like, he was born and raised, his father and his father before him, they all grew up in Babylon. So, they obviously weren't speaking Hebrew, that didn't even exist. Like, Israel really never existed. It was Canaan, So
Right.
it is interesting to think, like, where did that come from? And even when you get to Moses, like the one that actually wrote the Bible, or the law rather, even he, was born and raised and grew up in Egypt. And so you wouldn't, it's like, it seems like it would be a nice rabbit hole to go down and figure out like where that actually began, the Hebrew language, because I don't know, all the people that are called are, called out of somewhere.
Yeah, you mean Hebrew as a result of the Tower of Babel, or before as a
Well,
result,
the thing
or
is,
later?
okay, let's pretend we're there. We're at Babel, okay, and let's just pretend everybody speaks one language, and that's the case. And now all the languages are dispersed. Who is speaking Hebrew?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
where's that?
Yeah, that's kind of what related to the question I was asking myself earlier in the episode, which was, okay, I can imagine that a rabbi would say the original language was Hebrew, that Adam spoke Hebrew, and then the other languages were sort of separated or broken off from Hebrew, or again, kind of back to the core question of the Beyond the Verse, was there an unknown sort of heavenly language that was being spoken, and then all earthly languages were broken off and sort of descendant of that? And so, yeah, you wonder, I mean, if we're just following the sort of meta narrative of the ancient Hebrews being God's chosen people and everybody else kind of wasn't, at least in the Old Testament covenant, what was it? Did it have something to do with the Hebraic language? Did it have something to, how is that choice made? What separated them besides language at that point? Kind of going back to the Ukrainian thing. If it was at that point, the only difference between these humans was their language, how does at that point, it's very similar to the Ukraine thing. The only thing that would differentiate the Hebrews from non-Hebrews is the language of Hebrew. It's very interesting. Is that
right? But I'm not sure if like my thought is fully getting across to you. Maybe it is. I'm just overcomplicating it. But it's
give
like,
it a go again.
who is speaking Hebrew though? After Babel, there is no land of Hebrew speaking people. There's Babylon and there's Canaan, and even if Hebrew was an original language, and you're saying that maybe God just added on a bunch of new languages, like where
Right.
Abraham comes from, they're all speaking Chaldean.
Uh-huh.
And
Oh,
then,
I see what you're saying. So
and
Chaldean,
Abraham, yeah, go ahead.
is Chaldean a language? I'm not familiar with that. Is there a language of Chaldean?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. Well, that would be interesting. So yeah, then if Abraham, the father of the Hebrews, uh, yeah, was Chaldean and spoke Chaldean, where did Hebrew come from? Yeah, I'm not sure.
So I said I love etymology, right? So as soon as the show started, I went in there and checked out the verse at the Tower of Babel, and it says that God confused the languages. And the word for confused, it means to either mix or also to overflow. They say that like the imagery for it is like an overflowing cup, but it could mean to mingle or to mix. Um, it it probably more accurately means exactly what it says, rather than God made languages, and going back to what you're saying about the verse also says that they were of one mind.
Mm-hmm.
So God threw confusion into the mix, not necessarily like just different languages, because I work with people that do not speak the same language as me at all, and we're still able to get things done. It's
Uh-huh.
not easy, but like, you know, if we were building a tower and we all just started speaking French and Italian and Latin and Chaldean, then we still would be able to get it done.
Right.
So yeah, there's definitely so much more going on there. And
Yeah. The
also
confusion, yeah, is certainly, it could be something besides languages.
in one of the extra biblical books, it's either Joshua or Jubilees, it says that they actually weren't exactly of one mind because they all had different intentions. They all wanted to build this tower to get to heaven, but the reasons were all different. Different groups of people had different reasons of why they wanted to do it. So that may just be, nonsense, but it's just interesting that
Oh,
would be a legend that's written down.
that's interesting. Yeah, I had never heard that before. I haven't spent too much time in Joshua. I've spent some time in some extra biblical books, but yeah, that's interesting. I had never heard that before. I think there's an interesting conversation there than a unity of mind versus unity of purpose. More like,
Yeah.
hey, we all want the same thing, even if it's for different reasons. which is a little bit closer to how you could describe maybe our situation right now, or just history in general, where you'll have disparate groups coming together, the enemy of my enemy is my friend type of thing, or you know, hey, we may have different things going on, but we want the same thing, and that's some sort of technocratic utopia beast system. Who knows?
Yeah, and there's another Jewish legend about the, I guess, onomatopoeia names. Another Jewish legend is that there were Nephilim that were named by their father, like Heave and Ho or something like that, just for the sake that when men, um, you know, are like beating themselves up, like working themselves into the dirt, uh, they have to cry out these names, you know.
Huh. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
And
Kind of goes back
another,
to the yay, what was it? Yo, hey, ho theory of language.
yeah. And you know, that's, I didn't think of it till just now, but like that's kind of what God's name is the breath, you know, the breathing.
Right.
Um, and also, according to, you know, Heiser's thesis, it wasn't until this Babel event, the confusion, that God placed, you know, placeholders, spirits over nations. So, you know, I wonder if maybe that's part of the confusion, like maybe the tormenting spirit that was sent after Saul.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. It's like, you know, if we go with the theory that they, yeah, weren't of one mind, but of one purpose, and then a confusion could come in and suddenly, you know, all the different desires that they have, you know, there could be some mix em ups about how to best, you know, suddenly their singular purpose or their singular direction or conclusions sort of change. And for that to happen sort of at the population level makes total sense that, yeah, there would be some principality who is given authority over, you know, these sort of smaller groups of people. That's very interesting. Um, Man, I'm gonna need to go look into some of those, tuck into some of those extra biblical texts again, because there's some interesting context that could be helpful. I don't know, maybe. We'll see.
If nothing else, they're definitely entertaining. You know, it's,
Yeah, right.
in my opinion, I'm not like a huge Tolkien fanboy, but I absolutely appreciate the work. But in my opinion, it's better than Lord of the Rings.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I have one last thing.
Okay.
Way earlier, someone was talking about, like, I guess, flirting with simulation theory, the ones and zeros and all that. Have you seen this guy that claims to see a code
Yes.
through like laser beams? You saw this,
Yeah, on DMT specifically. He takes
right?
DMT and stares at a laser on a wall, and he's replicated this experiment with like hundreds of his friends or something, and he claims that all of them kind of see it, which I don't not believe. I'm sure you see a lot of crazy stuff on DMT. Actually, I kind of have a connection to somebody who knows him, and
Yeah,
this person said they could, you know, connect us if we were interested in that, which
right.
I certainly would be interested in talking to him. But yeah, that happened maybe like 6 months ago or something. That was kind of floating around a little bit more.
Well, the have you heard anything about the images that he's seeing specifically?
If I'm correct in remembering, he's like sees the code in the laser on the wall, and it's very similar, he says, to like computer code or like code in the Matrix, you know, the green falling symbols. I think he
Hmm.
said you could actually see the physical code in the laser, which, look, I could almost trip out and look at that right now, not on DMT, and stare at a laser against the wall. You kind of do see the like singular points of a laser. Do not flash a laser in your eyeballs, kids. But yeah, I've spent some time staring at a laser on a wall, not on DMT, unfortunately. But yeah, what do you think about it?
Well, what I heard was that, remember the egg retrieval?
Yes.
Well,
The
supposedly,
UFO, for those who need a
right,
reminder, the
right.
UFO egg retrieval, there's a video that dropped recently, which was a night vision shot pointing down from a military helicopter, as this helicopter had, on the end of a long line, they had strapped a large egg type craft and was transporting it.
Supposedly, it had writing on it that matches what he saw.
Yeah, oh, yeah, I did hear that. Yeah, yeah. I mean, hello. Who knows, man? Who knows? Maybe Enoch's in there. Is where he's hiding.
Which one?
That's a great question. Is it a Nephilim egg? Do Nephilim lay eggs? We do know that Nephilim penguins do lay eggs.
That's exactly where my mind was going.
Didn't they find it in Antarctica too, or am I adding that part?
Um,
I think I heard a
I,
story where they had found a different one. This may have been made up, but I think they were saying there was a story that it matched an egg that somebody found in a cave in Antarctica or something.
yeah, whatever it is, it's definitely ramping up.
Yeah, man. I'm just like trying not to think about it too much now. Have you seen the orb thing?
I don't
The
think I have, no.
Okay, so just last night fell into another rabbit hole. I'm pretty good at not doing this anymore, but it happens once in a while. I fell back down the rabbit hole of MH370, the airplane that had the orbs fly around it and teleport.
Malaysia.
What did I say?
Well, no, you just said the number
Oh, yeah, yeah.
five.
Right. Malaysia flight MS-370 or something. And the orbs kind of float around it and teleport. I went into a deep hole with that last night again. There's apparently a lot of work has continued to be done there. But just I think it was last month, maybe a couple months ago, there was footage of a silver orb that was floating around unusually, I believe in Argentina, and then it crashed, and it's about the size of maybe a volleyball. And since then, some scientist guys got their hands on it. They retrieved it, and they've been like looking around, like looking at it, x-raying it, looking at it with a microscope. There's a whole thing. I mean, it's pretty hot right now. Why did I say this? What were we just talking about?
Just UFOs.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. So,
I
my thing is, I think this orb that they found, whether it's alien or not, it could be one of these plane teleportation dark matter black projects from the government or something. I don't know.
True.
Yeah, man.
I'm sorry. I did actually see that, but when you said orb, I just went to paranormal light orb. That's what I thought you were talking about.
Right.
This silver thing also had some kind of like writing on it or something, right?
That's what they're saying. Some people are saying it's Enochian language, it's Enochian symbols. Similar to what you said with the egg. The egg they found having Enochian symbols on it. And the Enochian symbols are very funny. I mean, it's very interesting because the way they talk about it with aliens and Enochian symbols and stuff, you're like, oh, it must be so ancient, it must be so, legit. There must be some sort of Rosetta Stone of this Enochian. It must be in the Book of Enoch, Not at all. The Enochian language came from like the 16th century. This was John Dee, the English courtier and scholar and occultist John Dee, and this other guy Edward Kelley. They allegedly channeled or received these Enochian languages. So while it's not like ancient, it came from the 1600s. It's older than America, I suppose, but certainly not like, founded on tablets from thousands of years ago. And it came because it got channeled by an occultist man. And so, even by that logic, you're like, okay, so either these are Nephilim, fallen angel, magic runes who are posing as aliens, etc., etc., or it's just kind of part of a narrative that's being deployed. Who knows?
Yeah, John Dee was popular at a time that was pretty like influential, as far as modern history, like the Age of Enlightenment.
Yeah.
When you got the New Atlantis coming out, and
it's where all of it all stems back from there, which is interesting. Which is interesting because at the behest of you and a couple other producers, I started looking into the little season thing.
Oh boy.
And that makes some very interesting postulation for like the year 1000 through right now. What's going on there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, buddy. Love talking to you. Thank you for helping us round out the dissection of the Beyond the Verse, getting to get Enochian language in the conversation. Appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, buddy. It's great to talk to you. I'll talk to you next time.
All right, man. God bless you.
God bless. Take it easy. Okie dokie. Look at that. Careful of the rabbit holes, folks, especially when you're laying in bed. That's when they get you. That's when you can fall. And you can't dig yourself out until it's like 3 a.m. Luckily, I will say, it is my prerogative to be as humble as I possibly can. But if I was going to brag about anything, I will brag that I only fell down the rabbit hole for about an hour. Okay. So that's pretty good. I wasn't up till 3 a.m. Made it to about 11:30. Okay. Look at this. Look at us. We're hitting 2 hours here. Okay. So we're going to start landing the plane. Just prepare yourself emotionally. Don't worry. We're not going anywhere quite yet. We got a couple more callers, but we're all going to emotionally prepare ourselves to start landing the plane. But we do have another caller sitting in the waiting room. We got Mitchell here. I'm going to bring Mitchell on stage and start the timer. What is up, Mitchell? How you doing, buddy?
What's up, Baz? I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I'm remembering the last time you called in, we had some pretty severe lag, so we'll see if that happens here. We'll have to give each other some time to respond here.
That's quite a good memory you've got on yourself there, sir.
I always remember a solid lag session. There's one thing that gets burned into my brain. I might forget jokes, I might forget stories, I might forget theories themselves, but I'll never forget a solid lag.
Oh man, yeah. So I kind of missed what the target conversation is supposed to be, but from what I've gathered so far, the subject matter has been along the lines of language. So where did that all begin?
Well, it started with Gonza's Beyond the Verse. It was around a study of what language would have been spoken in the garden, what language was spoken until Babel, what happened when the rest of the languages confused everybody after Babel, and then talking a little bit about Enochian language and also the mention, I believe, in Luke about tongues of angels and sort of heavenly language as well. And it's just sort of spiraled out into whatever the Holy Spirit wants to talk about from there.
Right on. Yes. Holy Spirit, please lead this conversation. So what prompted me to call in initially after listening to the last couple of callers was that inside when I was really digging into cymatics, I had come across a video that displayed how they were they were experimenting, um, and this may have even gone back to Ernst Schladny, the one of the OG cymatics guys, the guy that wrote the big cymatics book.
Okay.
That uh, the the Hebrew alphabet was appearing at certain frequencies that were being played. I don't know what specific one. At one time, I had all this stuff written down, but yeah. So the um, some of the char- characters from like a Paleo Hebraic uh, alphabet were appearing on the plate that was being. I think they were using a speaker in this particular experiment, and a lot of the shapes that come up are very symmetrical and geometric in nature, right? But um, then there's like, you know, then there's some that are not exactly symmetrical, and I think I'm trying to think of one of the main ones that was coming up. It was the one. Oh goodness gracious! Uh, got this stuff written down somewhere. Um, anyway, yeah. So that just led me along the rabbit trail of God speaking the universe into existence,
Right.
and and you were talking earlier about. Uh, did you say that you had done DMT
No,
and
no,
stared at a laser?
I had not done DMT, but there's a fellow who I could get in touch with if I so chose. Hopefully, if he was interested in getting in touch with me, who was getting a lot of attention. It was about 6 months ago, it was last year at some point, where he had discovered that if he smokes DMT and shoots a laser across a wall and then stares into the sort of refracted laser on the wall, that he can see sort of the code of creation. And I think even he mentioned he could see sort of through creation, through the code to see stuff on the other side. And then he claims to have recorded like 100 of his friends, or 100 people. I don't know who has 100 friends. 100 different people in his
Right.
circle to do the same thing, and they reportedly all saw the same thing. So I don't have the full story on that, but haven't heard much about it lately. But yeah, it was a thing. It made the rounds. It's had its time in the limelight there.
Okay. All right.
Have you ever done
I found.
DMT?
Oh no. There was a time when I was really getting into some new agey type stuff that I really, really wanted to, especially ayahuasca in that form.
Uh
Um,
huh.
I'm glad that opportunity never came up. I'm glad that I did not open that doorway. Yeah, I don't think that's probably not a very good. I have done what do you call it, peyote, but that was at a time, well, kind of around the same era, around the same few years. I was seeking truth before I became, a full blown, Christian dude that
Right.
is completely sold out for Jesus. Right? I was, I believed in God. I I was not yet at the point where I believed that I still doubted that the Bible was inerrant. I thought that there was a lot of uh, alterations that had happened over the years. I thought it couldn't be trusted completely for a long time.
Sure.
So I sought truth in so many different areas, and a lot of the things I was attracted to was uh, sort of the Native American uh, worldview. Well, that covers a broad spectrum, but
Yeah,
you know, t-
it's all part of the journey, buddy. There's lots of twists and turns until God leads us home here. So I totally
yeah.
understand.
But speaking of that reminds me of um, what's Glenn Beck even did a thing on this where they found believe it was in Ohio. Um, they found some some ancient like block form Paleo Hebraic uh, stuff. I forget what the artifact is called, but it was found in the mounds. Um, the ones that look like a snake. I forget what they're called.
Yeah, the serpent mounds. We've talked with L.A. Marzulli quite at length about those things. Yeah, there's a whole theory about the Hebrew people coming over on boats and becoming the Native Americans. There's also, of course, a theory that the Nephilim had such a journey happen there whenever they got back up on their feet in one way or another. Yeah, I'm totally familiar with the phenomenon.
Yes, yeah. So there's that. There's one particular artifact that is a depiction of what looks to be Moses, and it has the block Hebrew letters around it. It's a very small rectangular artifact, and it's got the Hebraic. It's basically a depiction of the Ten Commandments around the outer edge of that artifact, and it's like, yeah, what's that doing there?
Yeah, those languages, if they started in Babel, they sure traveled quite a ways, man. It's very interesting. I mean, that's just as mysterious as sort of a floating orb in Argentina with Enochian language on it. Might as well be might as well be in the same episode. Hey, man, thanks for calling in.
Right.
I appreciate you bringing up these funky things, man. I'm always humbled by the amount of stuff I gotta dive back into that I forget about, but they pop back up and connect to so many different things. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you too, Basil. Just real quick, just
Okay.
to sum it all up. So there, I don't know what it is, man, but there is something to this, um, this whole, um, you know, frequency frequency thing with the cymatics. It's like God preserved the the original spoken Hebrew language by you know if you can bring up that Hebrew alphabet through cymatics by producing a certain frequency, then you have, it's like a key. There's some sort of key that is unlocked there. If you see where I'm going with that,
Yeah, no,
and
it goes to an early part of the conversation where Rochelle was walking us through the math, the numbers, math being the language of God. I believe it was Einstein who said that, could have been somebody else, but the
right,
numerical aspects of ancient Hebrew and how that displays
right,
itself if you're looking at a sort of eternal mathematical code in the very, root of existence. And as far as we can tell, matter is energy, and energy is waves in different forms. and God spoke everything into existence. It seems to be the matter, the math, the language of creation, man. There's no doubt about it.
Right, and all these things are being rediscovered now at this time, you know. So yeah, there's definitely something going on here, brother. Good talking with you, man.
That's right, buddy. Thank you for calling in. Appreciate it, buddy. I'll talk to you next time.
All right, later, Bess.
Okie dokie. Bye bye. And it all comes around. It always all comes around over again, doesn't it? Yes, it always does. All right, we got one more wonderful caller sitting here in the waiting room. We're going to say hey, and then we're going to land the plane. What's up? We got our Russian handler. How are you? You're on stage.
Hi. I don't know how to start, but
just dive right in.
Just from personal experience, it's fascinating how language is immersed in culture and how fluid it is. I mean, how many dialects of English there are, depending on where you live. And it's also, again, this is a culture.
Uh-oh.
Two personalities, one that thinks in Russian and one that thinks in English. And MK Ultra. Anyway.
You Soviets, you got all sorts of stuff going on in there.
Yeah. They're just, what am I trying to say? Yes, language, it actually does change your thinking, the way you see the world too, sometimes to a point.
Absolutely.
And it's really interesting. Just the way different languages flow and their syntax and how you build sentences and everything. It's fascinating, to say the least.
No, you are absolutely correct. I mean, that is the trippiest thing. I've said it on the air many a times. It is a core principle in trying to dissect and deconstruct and analyze, what's in the media, because the media is essentially not just trying to tell you about the world, it's trying to craft the world around you, because really, we only know what we can perceive, and what we perceive is mediated through so many different methods. Last episode, we kind of tripped out a little bit about color and how color doesn't actually exist. It's just various wavelengths of whatever, and it's just our brain that takes these wavelengths and interprets them as color. Doesn't actually exist like in objective reality. And in the same way, the language is the language that we hear, the language that we speak. It's not us trying to describe what's in our head. It's not just us trying to describe what's in our head, but the words that we have, the words that we're given, the words that are defined, the words that we even have to use to describe something to ourselves in our own brain, is actually affecting how, like, the closest thing we can perceive as our reality. And that's why, propaganda is so powerful. That's why, a strong centralized information system, like a mainstream media or a propaganda department or something, is so diabolical, because it's not just telling someone something you want them to hear. You are actively shaping their perception of the world around them. The example that's always given for this is when the conquistadors arrived in South America, I believe it was. The natives, this may be an apocryphal story, but this is at least the story that's given as the example. The natives standing on the beach would look out and they would see the ships. There were 3 ships out on not the horizon, but out on the water. And because they had no word for ship, they had no idea that something that big could even float on water, even if something that big could exist at all. There's a pretty large construction for a primitive brain. They had no context for it, and they just called them clouds. And they didn't just call them clouds because they didn't have a word for ship. They just thought they were clouds. They didn't have a word to describe, a giant wooden thing. And so they went around and talked about how these clouds arrived on the ocean, and, these white men stepped out. So, yeah, no, that may be a fake story, but it is the one that's sort of culturally given to really, truly comprehend. And it's very difficult. Again, it's like so many things at this point in my life. I've known so many things intellectually, and I've known this fact intellectually for a very long time. But there comes a point when you really feel and know a concept, like the language that you're given, the language that you use, like you said, even just the language you speak to yourself in your brain, your own internal dialogue, is your perception of reality is entirely controlled by the language that you have to speak with these things. It does strike a little bit of awe and wonder into my heart when I think, goodness gracious, so Adam had some sort of original heavenly language that he would not just speak with God in, but he would speak to himself in his own mind as he's going around co-creating, naming things. We can only, at least for folks like me, can only perceive of this story in English. We say, oh, and Adam saw a fox and named it Fox and things like this. But the fact that we can't even tell this story to ourselves, in the language that the story was written in, that's just one layer. But we can't even listen or understand this story in the language that Adam was using, makes it dimensions apart. I mean, light years away from a true understanding or perception of what was really going on. It's really quite frustrating, actually, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you speak Russian and Ukrainian in your mind? Is that what I heard you say?
No, I speak Russian and I speak English. I do not speak Ukrainian.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I remember when I was real young, I must have been just a teenager, maybe 13 or something. I went on a missions trip to Asia, and we had these handlers, I guess, some locals who would help us get around. And I remember asking this local, because she was a pretty girl, so I'm just trying to think of anything to say to her. But she spoke very good English, but also the native tongue there. And I asked her, do you think in, what language do you think in? And she said, both. It depends on which, who she's speaking to. So she's not, when she's speaking in English, she's thinking in English. And when she's speaking another language, she is thinking in another language. And I thought that was so interesting, but it did not hit me until I got older. I'm like, oh my goodness, am I even talking to the same person if they are speaking or thinking in a different language? Like the perception in my own brain of reality, what's going on around us, is dictated so precisely by the language that I know. And for somebody to be able to mentally switch languages so easily or so quickly, I wonder how much of an effect that has on their, their experience of reality in that moment. Or maybe it's just a much broader, longer thing over time. I don't know. But these are just trippy thoughts that we get to talk about on the show.
Yeah, I don't know. I primarily think in English now because I've spoken English for the past 10 years. And when I speak to my family, speak Russian so that I forget.
Uh-oh.
I struggle because
I apologize, our Russian handler. I don't know if you can hear me. You have full on turned into a robot voice. So we'll see if it comes back here in a second. But if it doesn't, I want you to know that I appreciate you calling in. I love talking to you, and I want to talk to you again. So let's see if the connection has gotten any better. Are you still there? Oh, oh no! Now you're not. Now you're not just our Russian handler. You're our cyborg Russian handler. Goodness gracious! Oh, there you are. I hear your laugh again. Thank you so much for calling in. Really appreciate what you bring to the show there, our Russian handler. Thank you very much.
All righty. Have a good one.
Bye-bye. Talk to you next time. There we go, folks. We officially got the instruction from headquarters over there from our Russian handler. That means we got to land the plane on the show. Appreciate everybody coming in, listening live, coming in, listening on the podcast version, and stick around. Make sure to, I'll say this, we don't say this enough, but please take a second, hit the like button before we wrap up here. And make sure to turn on notifications. Hit that little bell button if you're on YouTube, and if you're on Rumble, click all the buttons that you can click. I don't really know what you can click over there, but just click them, please, for your boy. Do it. And of course, remember to text the word canary to 877-740-3226. Yes, even you podcast listeners, text the word canary to 877-740-3226 and send me a little message next time. We'll be sending out the next notification on Monday, so stick around for that. The Beyond the Verse videos. Oh, you know what? We had that producer come in. I'm going to thank this producer here because, of course, this episode is on the value for value model. No advertisements, no commies, no cartels, no governments, no Vatican money, no NGOs. I mean, what the heck? USAID, come pay the bills. But no, not yet. We're entirely funded by people who get value from the show. So if you get value from this show, the understanding is, hey, it only can continue to exist if producers, that's you, put time, talent, or treasure back in. And it's worked so far. We're praying it'll continue working. As long as the Lord wants this show to exist, he will call his people to produce it. And just because we got the text message from this person during the show, so I'm assuming it was meant to be credited here today. We'll also add them on Monday, just because I want to make sure they get all the credit they can. We had an executive producer come in for today's show. Now, as executive producer, TDL Prez, the man from Atlanta, he comes in with a note here, says, with love from Bella Zuzu, a little bright canary. Yes, it's a new little baby that TDL Prez has over there. Congratulations. With love from Bella Zuzu, a little bright canary, Mai and TDL Prez. Oh, hello, Mai. Thank you very much. Your ATL DJ rockers. Man, if I ever go to Atlanta, sounds like I got some pretty cool parties I can show up to. Please keep us in your prayers. Lots going on with the getting used to, as well as trying to be serial entrepreneurs, as well as just keeping the vibes 100s. Thank you so much, TDL Prez. Hey, good luck. God bless you, serial entrepreneurs over there. I understand it's a tough life. But goodness gracious, God bless you. TDL Prez and fam came in with a $533.33 executive producerships, completely turning this week around, TDL Prez. God bless you. That's why I want to make sure to credit you when Gonz is on the air, and we can play you some jingles as well. But goodness gracious, that is so generous. And you know, honestly, going to get me a little bit emotional here because as those who caught last Kinnear Cry News Talk, it's been a pretty rough week for producership, and that is just the nature of things. We're not interested in trying to, guilt anybody into anything or be some sort of petulant child about anything, but, we are also wanting to be transparent about the situation over here. Because it is just true. We're not going to pretend that the situation is one way if it's not the other way. But we also have full faith, and God shows up again and again, very faithful, to make sure that his mission can continue. and we can stay on track, that we can keep doing it. And that's also one of the ways that he confirms to us that we are staying on track, staying on the narrow path, doing what he wants us to do. And that's not just for Gons and I, but for all the producers. So a $533.33 executive producership saving the day from the whole fam over there, Bella Zuzu, Mai, and TDL Prez. This has got to give somebody over there knight status. So we might have a knight or a dame or a little baby dame with the Protectorate of Atlanta. Who knows? I'm not going to do the accounting. TDL Prez, you should do the accounting. This has got to get you pretty close to that, buddy. But thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts, and not just from Gons and I, but from all the producers. Because remember, folks, when you produce the show, you're not just producing it for Gons and I. You're producing it for thousands of people all across the world who depend on our producers to keep us alive. And again, not every producer needs to produce every single episode. But, you know, the Holy Spirit has a way of nudging people at just the right time so everything gets covered. And you know what? This is a really good moment to remind everybody, because the deadline is coming up. It's in 2 days. There's only 2 more days to go sign up for the Supply Drop. And if you don't know, Supply Drop is one of our most beloved producership programs. The retention rate on this is very high. And I only say that to say that people love it. People have been on it for many years and stay on the Supply Drop, because what that means is they support the show for $33.33 a month, which means they're always caught up on their producership. They're always a part of the producer family. They're always in our hearts and prayers. They're always staying in tight with what it takes for God to keep this show alive, and God bless them for that. And they're always, every quarter, receiving a package from us with a bunch of awesome stuff designed and created and shipped and loved by other Canarians. There are other Canarians around the world, well, in this case, around the country, who have made it their sort of producership mission to do this for us. And it supports their family as well, supports the show, and it really is a beautiful example of the kingdom of God getting in this sort of generative cycle where everybody's winning. So this next Supply Drop is going to have a hat just like Gonza's hat, the prayer hat. You can wear it at meetups and whenever you listen to the show. It could be your little podcast listening hat or whatever. And it'll also come with a hard copy of Sam Swanson, Slave to Servant, friend of the show, amazing musician. His new, I don't even want to call it a record. It is a record, but it is an inspired piece of satirical, yes, but also very spiritually powerful music with Gons and I do a bunch of interludes. It was very fun to make. It's very fun to listen to. And you'll have a hard copy right there in your Supply Drop with your Gons prayer hat right on your doorstep in the next month or so. But you got to sign up in the next 48 hours. There is a deadline because we have to do manufacturing stuff. So don't wait. Just go to canarycrysupply.com. Just how it's spelled, canarycrysupply.com. And sign up. And you'll be keeping the show alive. You'll be plugged in. You'll be in the zone, and you'll be kitted out with some of the coolest, most important gear in the world. canarycrysupply.com. All right, that's it for today, folks. You know what that means. We can't land this plane without our plane landing music. I don't know if you guys are watching this show. It's called The Rehearsal. There's going to be at least one person who's like, oh my gosh, Basil mentioned The Rehearsal. It's a show on HBO. I don't even know how to describe the show. I don't know how. And anybody who's seen it, you get it. I don't know how to describe it. But in his investigation, he's investigating stuff about the airline industry. And in his investigation, he theorizes with some very good, hard evidence that Captain Sully, you know, the guy who landed the plane in the Hudson River about 10 years ago or more, became a celebrity. Tom Hanks played him in his movie. Can we be serious now? I don't want to give it away. I actually don't want to give it away. But he has a plane landing song that the theory is he must have been listening to when he landed the plane. That's kind of what feeding the ducks is for us, okay? It gets us in the right frame of mind. Releases the tension. Seals in our brains everything we've learned and talked about during the show. Lowers blood pressure. Lots of health benefits to feeding the ducks. And even more health benefits to feeding the ducks when you talk through the whole thing and you let it loop automatically, because I forget to turn off the looping button. And so there it goes again. What a treat. What a delight. Thanks to all the producers. Your time, your talent, your treasure. Remember, you can go to canarycry.support to support the show in whatever way you want. It's up to you. I don't care. But we'll be back Saturday. Beyond the Verse, the individual videos, we're going to be posting those on the Face Like the Sun YouTube channel for the foreseeable future. It's going to be a little test. So we'll make sure to link you over there if you want the individual link for Beyond the Verse. And what a great thing to kind of send around to maybe your slightly more normie, but, you know, fringe interested friends. Just send them over the Beyond the Verse. Start a conversation. Expand their understanding of what God has done through history and what he's doing today. Just a recommendation. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Canary Cry Clubhouse. Thanks to all the callers. Make sure to tune in next time. Until then, think outside the cage.